Wanna demolish the only green space park in town? Then say bye-bye to every resident. So this is a story from my grandmother that I was recently reminded of when my mom watched an episode of The Brady Bunch. In the episode, Double Parked, the local park near the Brady household is threatened to be destroyed so a courthouse can be built. In the episode, to save the park and stop the protesting, Mike Brady, whose company was given the project to build the courthouse, is able to get the site moved to the town dump. That saves his job and the park. My grandmother's story has a different ending, but still a good one. When my grandma was little, her family lived in a small American town. About 100 to 200 people. Unfortunately, Grandma was very little, so she doesn't recall the town name, or if it's even still around. She only knows this story because her parents would tell it to her. And my great-grandparents passed before I was born. This occurred in the 1950s. So people were starting to invest in all these cool things to improve life at home. The town consisted of mainly a small village square where shopping was done, the town hall, a bank, the scattering of houses, and the only non-wooded open space with what could be called a playground. According to town lore, it was something the town's forefathers, who founded the land because of the fertile soil and healthy trees that were great lumber, had created out of stubby wood for their children to play on. This park had been maintained and repaired over the years by the town residents, as they had all played on it as children. Well, one day, to bring in tourists, the town mayor and city council decided to use that cleared space for a project instead of clearing away more trees. Grandma can't recall exactly what they wanted to build there, other than something that would draw in tourists and money. So the mayor announced it, and expected the townspeople to be on board. They weren't. According to Grandma, Great-grandpa told her that almost every resident was absolutely furious. The town was doing fine as a farming, lumber community, and they didn't want to sacrifice their children's play space for some dumb tourist attraction. Well, the mayor didn't care. So much for democracy, and spent extra money to hire an outside company to come and tear up the park. What happened next was told to me from Grandma, and it's pretty crazy. The residents rioted and attacked the workers who came in. I mean 2x4s, pitchforks, dogs, anything to protect the park. Some people were apparently crazy enough to tie themselves to the play structure and the few trees left in the park. The mayor kept pushing, and got law enforcement help from outside the town to control residents. The sheriff who lived in the town even revolted as well, if you can believe that. That's when someone torched the town hall. I kid you not. Grandma was very adamant about that. The mayor's house and the houses of the other council members were also attacked. Protesters were arrested by the dozens. It finally came to a head. And while Grandma can't recall exactly how it happened, but only that in the end, the park was demolished. The over 100 years wooden structure that generations of children had played on and cared for turned into wooden junk. So, the residents not in jail decided to pull the ultimate rebellion. As one, almost 80% of the population of that town just up and left. Every single resident. They just left. But they didn't put their houses on the market. They, according to what great-grandma told Grandma, were so pissed off that they would rather live in tents or with family in cities nearby, that they left the town with no residents and no way to bring in more since they still owned the houses. Those farmers and lumberjacks kept working though on their land, but didn't bring their revenue into the town, didn't consider themselves residents. The 15% of that remaining 20% were incarcerated, but joined their families in leaving the town when freed. That left the remaining 5%. consisting of the families of the town mayor and town council. In a single stroke, that town lost all its income, all their residents. No shops or stalls were open and the streets were virtually devoid of life. The bank was shut down and decommissioned. My grandma doesn't know the aftermath, whether the town still exists or not, or if that town mayor ever got his tourist attraction. But she loves to use this story as a lesson to us grandkids. Never, ever, screw with the people who are keeping your town business afloat. TLD or in title. Note: can everyone please keep in mind that I'm only telling what my grandmother told me from what her parents told her? This story likely has gone through the telephone effect, but I still feel that the basis of the story is true. If anything was likely exaggerated, it's probably the town hall burning. But don't tell grandma that. She's very adamant about it being true. If this tale ends up not being true or overly exaggerated, I'll amend my post if it's true. Even if there's a few exaggerations, then I'll provide the evidence. Until then, please keep in mind my grandma is in her 70s and was younger than 5 when the event took place. She doesn't recall the town name or what state it was in. And 20 years ago she and Grandpa moved to Canada for the health benefits. My parents and siblings and I joining them 5 years ago. None of us kept our U.S. residency, for personal and painful reasons with a long story I'd rather not divulge. Grandma has been trying for years to figure out where the town was. But keep in mind there are 50 states. At least 48 in the main country. It's been a while since I had to study all the states. And she's only narrowed it down to the states in the north. That's still at least 20 plus states to go through in a good chunk of years. Plus we're no longer American citizens. I can ask her when I next call her if she tried to backtrace through her parents' names yet. Or if she can't. Recall this as a very small, very rural town we're talking about here. There are a lot of ghost towns that have simply lost all their history and no one can recall the name too. And if the town hall really was burned, then all the records are gone too. This isn't a snap the fingers to get the answers process. Grandma has been searching for the town for years to no avail. Please, until then, do try to take this story with a grain of salt. I simply am the messages telling the story I've been told since I was a toddler. Note 2. Just want to mention that my great-grandfather was an orphan and great-grandma was a single child. And their only living descendant is my grandma. I have no granduncles or aunts from her side of the family. Also, the town from what she told was fueled mainly by lumber and farming. If there was any mining it wasn't mentioned. Maybe you guys can help us figure out where the town was. And if it did exist, like we believe, that would be great. I was also alerted to the possibility of using a birth certificate. But there's a problem with that. You see, my grandma's birth certificate got badly damaged when there was a flood in her adult years. When they lived in a small town in Minnesota. Her father had become a trucker and ended up being moved around a lot. And they were struggling with cash income, which was why she stayed with them. Another reason why the story feels true because they never sold the house. A lot of documents were ruined, some unsalvageable. Her parents had to get a replacement one, but none of them couldn't recall the hospital or town name. Hence issue. And Grandma learned that they were not born in the town, but that they probably moved there. And they had the only copy of Grandma's birth certificate. Grandma was only able to get a replacement because she had a driver's license to prove her ID. Her dad made damn sure she knew how to drive. But it doesn't have a town listed on it. Just her birth date, name, and I think everything else. I only saw it once though, and that's when I helped her clean out a file cabinet in their basement. But maybe there's a record somewhere. We'll keep searching though. Note. Okay everyone. Woke up to my phone blowing up. So before I go back to get some more Z's, I want to clarify a few things. 1. I can't give out my ID or location. It's due to why we moved from the States and got rid of our citizenship. I won't go into details, but our lives were threatened, so we had to vanish. We also changed our last names. 2. My grandma saw this post. My cousin actually saw this and sent her the link after recognizing the story. No, I'm not sharing their Reddit profile unless they want it. And left a text with some vital information. And chewed me out for being up so late. She knows my profile name, so knew that this was me. Sorry grandma. Her dad had been born somewhere in Oregon or Washington state. Orphaned since birth. And moved around all across the country as a young man. There's no record of him until after 1960. Which, as you can guess, makes things harder. Her mom didn't have a set residency until 1960. Jobs were moving, and it was mentioned that great-grandpa got a trucking job that moved them around a lot. He also managed to stay out of the Second World War, so there's no military record with his name. 3rd. We've tried free family finding websites. Either they link us to a place where we have to pay, which leaves a trail, or the records aren't on the site except for the deceased. No help there. And because of said event in one, she now definitely won't do the genealogy test. It's why we're focusing on the town and its events rather than the people. It's a lot harder to track a single family out of at least 60 of them. Sorry about all that. This is also my first social media account. C1. So I'd rather not have to delete it. Thank you. And I'm going back to my nap. As for the gold, seriously wasn't expecting that. Doesn't feel deserved because there's a lot of you crying bull. But still thank you stranger. The census records for 1930 and possibly 1940 are available for the public to review. Find your great-grandparents in the U.S. Census and you can probably find the state. If not the town, then you can look at newspapers.com to see if you can find articles about it. I'd like to believe this happened, because it would be some pretty awesome revenge. Oh, you want to go against the vast majority of the town and remove something much beloved? Well, you don't have a town anymore. You should try and find the town, it would be interesting. Please thank your Nana for the story. I fell down a rabbit hole of research. I haven't found anything yet. I suspect that the town didn't die completely. However, the post-World War II years were rough. With the logging reference and the farming reference. One of your better bets is Minnesota or Wisconsin. Some of her early memories could confirm this depending on the circumstances. I'd actually start your search for where her parents were buried. It may be worth it to do an ancestry membership, because news articles at the time would probably be available to you with an enhanced membership. Your great-grandparents' lives, including census information, can be found through there. Hugs. This honestly sounds believable for a rural village that may not be a part of a greater area. Not incorporated? Not sure the terms. Perhaps not all of it. A bit of a fisherman's tale. But a town realizing that the heart is gone and leaving. It has happened before. Maybe try our Unsolved Mysteries. They like a change from the murder, missing persons tales and may have good resources. You could also look into heritage roots. From what I have learned of the U.S. And it happens here in Aus too. Particular communities stick together. If you have a known cultural root, you may be able to find areas where peoples that shared that root congregated for work, security and community. Whether this story is true or false, it's sad to see comments claiming it point blank couldn't be true. That just means the commenters cannot empathize or fathom a situation where they would rally with their neighbors to protect their own interests. If people power is something we are so far removed from that it seems fictitious, what strength do we have left? That's sadder than the playground being lost. Entire governments have been toppled by rebellions led by normal folks. It's not that far-fetched that 80 to 160 people would relocate when their little town mayor turned against them. Funny how a place with 100 to 200 residents is considered a town. Here it would be called a village. I think this is probably true. In Alex Haley's Roots, when Kunta goes on a journey with his father, they come across an empty village. Apparently the chief started putting on airs and ruling in a way that the community found unacceptable. So they all snuck away in the dead of night. When the chief awoke to an empty village, he started going to all of the neighboring villages, promising to behave if they came back. He was referred to as an empty chief. So this probably used to be more common than people imagine. Thanks for sharing your story. I can totally believe it. I think many people aren't understanding that back in the 1950s, there wasn't such a population boom as there is now. Every 20 years the population doubles because people had not 1 or 2 kids, but 5 or 6. Birth control was frowned upon. You had to get a doctor to sign off on it. Now, even the small towns have double or triple the people. But back in those days, people could voice their concerns, raise mayhem, and the police didn't come out shooting all willy-nilly. I'm pretty proud of whoever was in that town. They really showed the stupid mayor. He really thought he could rule them with an iron fist. Hubris. What a bunch of dumbasses. I read an article by a man about a book written by a local resident about a county up in northern Indiana. The powers that be decided, since it was covered by a swamp, that they would drain all of it because in their minds, corn was the golden ticket. They completely ignored the fact that people came from states over to this county to hunt waterfowl, sightsee, and in general, spend time in a great, diverse habitat. The man who wrote the book, he was devastated. He estimated the amount of animals that came to nest, live, and use it as a migration stopping point. All gone. And corn? Well, corn bottomed out. You can't make that much money on it. Had they left the natural bogs, they could have had the tourist dollars. Idiots. The book was by Elmore Barth. I can't find a copy. I have looked everywhere. It's a rare book and in only a few collections. Since I don't live near those collections, I haven't been able to read it. In a modern reprise. https abcnews.go.com/us/protesters-portland-city-commissioners-home-set-fire/story. Id equals 74,054,924. That's awesome. And probably a bit true of today's world. The politicians may be in power, but the people have the numbers. And you can't mess with numbers. Power to the people. I know this will probably be looked over, but talk to the Mormon missionaries about family history. They have a free website called Family Search, which is dedicated to genealogy. And Family Search has access to all the popular genealogy websites. The best way to contact them is to go to Come Unto Christ and request a visit. And let them know it's for genealogy. They'll get you set up and going. Perhaps downloading a crap ton of images from abandoned towns and showing them to her could awaken some memories. Try Reddit's RBI or RBI2. The mayor kept pushing. and got law enforcement help from outside the town to control residents. The sheriff who lived in the town even revolted as well. If you can believe that. You know, when the person you're paying to enforce your will upon the populace is going, nah. Dog. Maybe. Just maybe. You should rethink your actions. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it. It really doesn't matter if all of the details are correct or not. The mayor and remaining news people would have rewritten it anyway. Don't stress yourself over some people wanting more details. Op question. Does she remember what the seasons were like and maybe any other towns that were nearby? That might narrow down your search some. This is what tarring and feathering was invented for. Pity it's fallen out of use by this time. There's zero chance this is true. Hundreds of people leaving their houses because of a playground? Come on. I want this to be Cocker Cities and their world's largest ball of twine so bad. The town is in north-central Kansas and is a farming community. I could totally see something like this happening there. Though the pavilion to house the twine was built in 1960, so the dates are off.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.